It's going backwards in a more or less orderly fashion. The tanks that we still have are concentrated into a mobile combat unit and amassed where the Russian is threatening us. Especially during this disengagement movements, it is of really great importance that the troop leader know exactly where the units are located. Easily, such a Russian cavalry unit is able to break through and suddenly appear from the side. Or T-34s and other Russian vehicles suddenly appear behind the front and go wild as well. There's a lot going on, but we still don't know exactly how far we still have to move back. The first fallback position by now is far behind us. And half of January is already over. I wonder how far the soil, fought over heavily, is supposed to be relinquished. Or are we just gathering momentum again for the summer offensive? Questions over questions. Once again, we are standing as security along the main supply road and have the mission to engage pursuing Russian tanks at great distance. But only 2 other vehicles are sitting in cover with us, one Panzer III and a handful of infantry soldiers with a truck. That, however, should be sufficient, because Ivan has become cautious in the last days. As soon as he gets hit on the nose by a long barrel, it's quite there for a while, and he tries elsewhere. Of course, we won't be able to play this game forever. It's cold, and the commander has the engine run every 30 minutes, so nothing here will freeze up. We are taking turns inside the tank and are able to warm ourselves by the infantry soldiers. They also received a proper meal from the last field kitchen who drove through here. We are also getting ourselves some of that, of course, and despite the reverse gear we are in, there's a good mood amongst the men. One sergeant with a decent number of decorations on his chest makes fun of the very young lieutenant. I reel him in and mention that he might be young, my commander, but he's not a chicken. During the past 2 encounters, he led the tank well. I didn't have any complaints there. He has, despite little frontline experience, apparently a knack for the tank business. But jokes are always cracked. One non-commissioned officer questions me why we didn't have any barrel marks on the tank yet. I explained to him that we just received the tank a few weeks ago and hadn't been able to paint on the few tank kills with Rosinante. It would be 3 with this crew. That wasn't much, remarks another. In that case, we should get at it again and burn Ivan another hole in his fur. I'm just about to respond with something else, cause slowly I'm getting fed up with this. But an older master sergeant sets the non-commissioned officer straight. He should shut up. He looks at me and says so loudly that all can hear it, Rudolf here has probably knocked out 40 tanks already, or not. And Hans has knocked out the 1 Russian tank in a solo mission. All eyes are on me. And I explain that I'd have to be around 34, that I've shot down, but not every kill was credited to oneself. As a tank gunner, that was a different affair anyway. Nevertheless, the men then are impressed, and already a flask moves over in my direction. Quickly a small sip against the cold, and a cigarette after that. That way no one will smell it. Especially the new commander does not like it a whole lot when we drink. Oh well, I think to myself, a machine has to be greased once in a while. Now shouts ring out. I hustle out of the truck towards Rosinante, climb onto the turret, and within seconds I'm sitting behind the optic. Target acquisition, enemy tanks at 2 o'clock, range 1000 meters. I aim the gun and await the firing command. However, nothing is coming. thinking the commander does not want to disclose our position so quickly and is holding off the first shot. The other tank isn't shooting anyway. The 50mm can't handle it. Suddenly we hear Stalin organ shells, but the entire blessing goes down in the patch of woods approximately a kilometer left of us. So that's where the Russian had suspected us. Cleverly done. I would have positioned myself there, but the commander stated that we should place ourselves here by the bend. Here we had less cover from airplanes, but that we are sitting here, no one would consider. Now the infantry soldiers are also visible. Our grenadiers are lying behind the machine guns and wait. I don't understand the Russians. Why don't they drive any reconnaissance and then move up? They always throw everything to the front, take the losses, and then finally mass their forces. This has to fail in the long run. At around 600 meters, the tanks stop, right in front of our nose. Now they are sending the infantry forward to check out a small collective farm to the right of us. In a pinch, we can shoot that to catch fire. We still wait. 3 enemy tanks are sitting in the approach, and about 100 Red Army soldiers. Now 2 trucks with anti-tank guns also come rumbling up. Those are, in my opinion, the bigger threat. I explained the situation to the commander. He has us reloaded to high explosive shells. He taps me on the shoulder and states that I should then first engage both of the anti-tank guns. 5 minutes pass by. Now the Russians are starting to bring the anti-tank guns into position. They're moving back and forth, but I take aim at the trucks since they contain the ammunition. Everyone waits until we open fire. We still wait. I'm sweating. But now, go, I think to myself. Then finally comes the command, fire! And the first shell leaves the barrel. Hit on the first truck, the ammunition tears the vehicle apart and flings the artillery piece forward. They've all been shot to pulp. Panic sets in. The anti-tank gun soldiers of the Reds try to quickly get the second gun ready to fire. I shoot again, but this time too short. I just missed the artillery piece. Despite that, a few Russians were shredded by the shell. Reloaded, and again a shell goes out. I hit a truck, but those crooks are still running around there. Therefore, the last high explosive shell into the position, and that anti-tank gun is also pointing its barrel upward. The Russian tanks have discovered us. A hail of bullets from the machine guns and the 50mm cannon of the Panzer III don't let the enemy infantry come to rest. The first tank shells from the T-34s are landing in our position, but due to the bend in which we are positioned, they can't hurt us much. I have the first enemy tank in my optic. Pull the trigger and hit. It's on fire. The Russians are trying to drive zigzag, but we know that game. At this range, I don't have to readjust. They are driving into the optic by themselves in such a way that I just have to briefly wait. But then the Russians do land a lucky hit on the turret. We are duly shaken. Now the commander has also caught on and is keeping his head inside the turret. He does have the vision blocks and doesn't need to stick out his noggin. Once again there's a clank, but that hit the mantlet. They must really want to know, those crooks. The tank far right stopped again. I'm aiming between the turret and upper plate. A shot, one can literally see the shell penetrate into the turret ring. The tank, as if wanting to cough, breaks apart. The turret is flung up high, so that tank is also gone. One is still left. The Panzer III is firing at it with his 50mm, but can't get through. I wait to see whether it's able to knock it out. The track is already off, and after the third hit, the tank is also smoking. finished. The remaining Red Army soldiers who didn't fall in the fire of the machine guns are withdrawing in a real hurry. But now we have to bag it and relocate before Ivan knocks us one on our top. 10 minutes later, we've already arrived in the patch of woods where earlier the Katyushas had impacted. We go into position and get comfortable. Merely minutes after this, a proper artillery strike goes down on our old location and chops everything to pieces. Well done, I think to myself, that commander is capable. We get out and take a look at the dents on the turret. Nothing big, but it rings quite profoundly when they hit. The infantry soldiers congratulate us on our kills, and now we may already paint on 5 rings. I can't keep going like that, I tell the crew. Everyone is content, and once again we've demonstrated to Ivan how sharp our sword really is. Unfortunately, we also have 2 wounded and need to send them back by truck. We stretch out a few tent tarps in the woods and pad everything out with some pine branches. It's not a truck by any means, but nevertheless, one can tolerate it here. We have the order to cover the retreat until noon tomorrow and will then be relieved by the fast armored reconnaissance. So we split up our watch with the others and lie down under the tanks to sleep. The night passes pretty quickly. A few illumination flares. Certainly Ivan is sending out patrols in order to find us. But the soldiers here are old hands and know what they are doing. Toward 3 a.m. then bang the machine pistols when an enemy patrol attempts to take us out. But that amounted to nothing. Without mercy, the Russians are fought down, and after it's all over, we have 4 dead Russians and 2 prisoners. But also once again 2 wounded of our own. One from the other tank who caught a bit of a shrapnel from a hand grenade, and a corporal with a shot through the shoulder. But he is a tough guy who, after receiving a proper bandage and with a swig of rum, grinds down his teeth and has to wait till tomorrow. The prisoners are interrogated and we find out that an entire guard division is on our heels. Well, that didn't quite look like guards yesterday, but we'll see. We give the Russians something to eat and we'll have to tie them up somewhere later. A little bit later, again some commotion and screaming. The Russians are bailing. Like the devil, they are running across the meadow in the direction of their own lines. My commander grabs a carabine and shoulders it. They're probably already over 100 meters away. Pow! The first one collapses. Pow! And the second one also finished. The soldiers are amazed at the shooting skills of the lieutenant. He puts the rifle on safe and hands it back to the grenadiers. Later, when we are alone, I ask him, "Shooting club?" He says with a grin, "But don't tell." He adds that the Russian certainly would have betrayed us immediately, so it had been necessary to not let them get back to their folks. And he's right. That way at least it remains quiet for the remainder of the night. But tomorrow it will go further back. How far back? That's the big question.